Wait a minute. James Gunn says that Superman is flawed. Since when? And he's really, really stubborn. I'm sorry, James, that's not Superman, is it now? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad and Monday's edition of the DCU Daily. Another beautiful day here in Ayia Napa, Cyprus. A very warm welcome. So one of the problems with James Gunn, he talks far too much. And as we discussed yesterday, because he talks far too much, his Superman is going to talk far too much. The criticism of Man of Steel is that Supes didn't speak enough. I don't agree with that. I think it was perfect what Zack and Goya and Nolan did with him, but there you go. But Gunn talks too much on social media. But now, because he has to market the movie, he's talking to a variety of publications, and he's basically digging himself a deeper and deeper hole. And the more he talks, the worse it's going to get. Admitting that he never checked that awful flying sequence, is ridiculous. I'm astounded by that. I'm astounded by that he said in his movie Superman is flawed, and he's a very stubborn character. I'm fine with Lois and Clark clashing. That's good. In any healthy relationship, there's heated debates, there's room for disagreement, right? As long as you can agree to disagree, something that our society today isn't able to do, and that makes me really, really sad. So the more James talks, the more concerned I get. He also was bragging about, directing Superman and Peacemaker 2 at the same time, running from one soundstage to the other. Surely that's not a very healthy situation. Anyway, what happens if Superman flops? We've had this discussion months ago, but we're really close to the release of this movie. It's pretty clear to me that this movie is going to open up domestically to around 70 to 100 million, including previews. By the way, if this movie is amazing, I'll hold my hands up, and that will make me happy. If this movie makes more money than I'm projecting, I'll hold my hands up, and I'll be really happy. All I can tell you is what I think from what the press and Gunn is telling us themselves. So when they say, 100 to 135 million, or 90 to 130 million, we all know what that really means. The 90, it's about the 90. Always remember that. It's about the 90. So what happens if Superman flops? They've announced so many projects. Announcing a slate from the very beginning was a problem. I believe that Gunn pulled out the Gods and Monsters arc out of his backside. I don't really think there's a real plan there, if you ask me. For example, now they were going to do a Wonder Woman prequel series. Now, according to him, it's taking time. Again, it's another one that's on the back burner. They're having trouble finding it creatively, or HBO are not happy because HBO and Gunn are clashing a lot. So this Wonder Woman prequel series is going to be on HBO Max. HBO are involved. I don't want HBO involved in DC TV. I think it's a really, really bad idea. I saw the problems and flaws with the Penguin series. Yes, it was well made. There were some really good elements to it, but we saw, the problems with that series as well. I don't want HBO anywhere near DC series, and I think it's basically a disaster because already Gunn and HBO are clashing. He wants to do things a certain way. He's coming up with ideas. They don't want a Booster Gold. What the hell are HBO going to do with a fucking, Booster Gold series? And the thing's called HBO Max, so HBO are always going to be involved, and they're a separate entity within WB. Although WB owns them, they can't really go in there and say, don't do this, don't do that. It really is an independent, production company and has a great reputation. I don't think the quality of their work is as good as it used to be. When we go back to True Detective Series 1 or Game of Thrones. So there is that as as well. But the biggest mistake they did was announcing a slate, because Gunn wanted to look like he had a plan, and Zaslav wanted to create this, this shared universe, this connected universe, because Feige and MC and the Marvel Studios and the MCU did so well for 3 phases, more because of luck than judgment. He thinks he can, he can repeat that success. I believe the era of the connected universe is over. Feige and Marvel Studios were the only ones who were successful with it. And if they didn't go all girl boss, and if they didn't go the way they did with Phase 4 and beyond, they'd still be killing it now, probably. But DC, I don't believe, can succeed. I think the way forward now, they try to share universe with the DCEU, and, for some reason, there's many reasons why the DCEU didn't end up working, but it didn't. So when you see something doesn't work for your IP, you think, maybe we should just get auteurs, filmmakers and storytellers who have ideas for these DC characters, and let them make standalone movies, let them make a couple of movies, let them make trilogies like Nolan did with the Dark Knight trilogy, or how Burton did with his 2 Batman movies. That's the way DC should have moved forward. We saw how successful Joker was. Joker 2 didn't succeed for many reasons, but Joker, the first one, was successful on the parameters I think DC should have moved forward with. Instead, they brought in Gunn for this connected universe, and it's a big risk because they've announced all these projects, and a lot of them now are on the back burner, as I say, especially the TV shows, because Gunn and HBO simply can't agree on a creative direction to move forward. What happened to the authority? He's tried to explain the authority away as well. What happened there? So it's all very interesting, but the authority sounded like right up Gunn's alley because it's a group of people, blah blah blah, same old. But it's not. I don't think it's happening. It's not going to happen. They didn't have a script, so he explained it away. He says, if we don't have a script, we're not going to make it. We're not just going to, that's the problem with Hollywood today. It's just a distraction. It's just an excuse. So we don't ask the question, what fucking happened with the authority? So nothing should have been announced. They shouldn't have even, he shouldn't have been making Peacemaker 2 at the same time as Superman. Peacemaker 2 should have been on the back burner. Waller is on the back burner. Apparently they couldn't find the script. Maybe it's behind your settee or your sofa or something, James. But they should have just focused on Superman. But I don't think Superman should have been their launch movie anyway. But it is, and Gunn, to me, just doesn't understand Superman. One of the things I said at the very beginning when I heard he was going to be doing a Superman movie is he can't be James Gunn. He has to find another way to tell a Superman story, and he can't. He's got all MCU, he's got all these other metahumans and DC heroes and all of that. And as I say, if this movie's great, I hold my hands up. If it makes a lot of money and it breaks records, I hold my hand up. But it's not looking good, is it? These projections, these box office projections are not looking good. And publications like The Hollywood Reporter are trying to cope. Keep on saying it's going to open up to 135 million. No, the actual projections are 100 to 135 million, which means it's going to open up from 100. Maybe if they're lucky, 110 million. But I don't see it opening up domestically any higher than that. And it's a crazy situation because, this movie could open up lower than the latest Captain America film, which he can't do. So the box office is it's a fascinating situation. This Superman movie, Gunn being involved, everything that went wrong with the DCEU. You've got the Snyder fans over there and they're digging at Gunn all the time. He's being constantly asked about online discourse and he says it's not important, it doesn't bother him. I think he's asking to be asked about the online discourse. He wants us to know that he's not bothered by it, but he absolutely is. the Snyder fans and everything they say is living rent-free in their head. Because the problem is, whether you like the Snyderverse or not, no one can cope with what Snyder did visually. And in terms of the story and the arc, I don't think Gunn can even do anything as good as what Snyder did, and the people who work with him. It was an amazing time for me personally. You may disagree, but it was an amazing time for me to be a DC fan. So what happens, right? If Superman fails, there's a Supergirl film that's supposed to be released. There's a Lanterns TV show that's supposed to be released. And it'll be very interesting what happens, because the reality is, if Superman flops and this Supergirl movie is released and this Lantern series is released, which you would assume they will be still, I think what they'd have to do at the very least is halt everything they're doing. Even though he's announcing that this is going to happen soon, his favourite project ever is happening soon, he's still insisting that Sergeant Rock is going to happen, and there's not a real script yet, so he's decided, without a script, it can't happen. It's an interesting situation. Clayface is going forward according to him, and everything is going well according to him with Clayface, but I don't believe anything will start production before Superman's released, before they know the box office. And I said the other day, the Batman 2 will happen, hopefully. If this movie flops, then Zaslav's going all in on Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves may take over DC Studios. Don't underestimate that situation. Because if this movie flops, they may try and say, well, we got our budget back, or we did okay. But it's a problem. You've got to start from a successful situation. If the Doctor Who revival didn't start with a successful, situation with the first episode Rose, they would have been climbing the hill upwards. If Iron Man wasn't successful, then they would have been in big trouble, because Iron Man 2 is nowhere near as good as the first Iron Man, but a lot of the films weren't beloved by Marvel fans. Captain America, the first Avenger, Thor, etc., etc. But Iron Man started well. But they found it hard at first, and it was a struggle after Iron Man. And really, it was only after Avengers, the first Avengers Assemble, that they found a real niche. And all of a sudden, the general audience were very, very interested. But before that, a lot of people were complaining about the other movies. So that's interesting as well. So it's very, very important for the DCU to start with a strong foundation, with a strong base camp. And I'm stumped, I'm genuinely baffled why he didn't just make a simple paint-by-numbers movie. The people who complained about Man of Steel wanted a basic Superman movie that makes Superman Superman, that avoids the contemporary issues that Man of Steel and BVS were dealing with. Right, so all you had to do was make a simple Superman movie. His first mistake was making Lex Luthor the main villain. When he said that, I thought he was lying. I think it's fucking crazy that Lex Luthor is the main villain in this Superman movie. Fans have told them for years now, we don't want Lex Luthor as the main villain. We want him in the background pulling the strings. That's interesting. A bit like Superman, the animated series, and many, many comics. But he didn't do that. He made Superman the main villain. Sorry, say that again. He made Lex Luthor the main villain. Who knows if he's going to make Superman the villain as well? Because the way Superman's whining, he's acting a little bit like a villain, isn't he? But I think making Lex Luthor the main villain was a huge, huge problem. And a mistake. A mistake. Let's be absolutely clear about this. I believe that is a mistake. We needed a real villain. I've been going on about Metallo for years. He's a domestic villain. He's interesting. And I've wrote that script where You know, Manchester Black and the Elite will be involved in that story as well. I think that's a more interesting story. And actually, Gunn could have easily done something like that. But he decided to make Lex Luthor the main villain. And personally, I think it's a mistake. You know, Brainiac would have been a great villain. Apparently, Brainiac's going to be in the post-credit scene. We will see. But what's important here is that people come in for this movie. Now, the embargo for social media reactions, apparently, and I apologise if I've got this wrong, but this is how I read it on X-Twitter. Apparently, the embargo won't lift for social media reactions of Superman till 3 days until release. That means that Warner Brothers Discovery, which is the studio who makes those kinds of decisions, not the logo that James Gunn is the co-CEO of, they've made the decision not to lift the embargo for social media reactions of Superman until 3 days before release. This means Warner Brothers Discovery are not confident about this movie. When a studio, I mean, look, Jurassic World Rebirth, they've already shown critics and social media influencers, I think, half an hour of the movie or whatever they've done. And I saw a bunch of reactions the other day. What that tells you is Universal Pictures, the biggest studio in the world right now and the most successful, are very confident about this movie. And I've told you all before, it doesn't matter if Rebirth's a great movie or a shit movie. It will make around $1 billion because unlike Superman, the Jurassic Park IP is very, very valuable. And people still relate to those movies, no matter the quality of those movies. That's the difference. And I think that Fantastic Four and Superman are really going to struggle at the box office because I believe the general audience are bored of comic book movies because they're not that interesting anymore, right? They're not even fun anymore. And the message creeping in, the girl bosses creeping in, the creative bankruptcy, the way Hollywood, I suppose, market movies these days isn't great. I remember marketing used to be so exciting, but it's not anymore. So anything's possible. Superman may open up big. Superman may be a great movie. As I say, I'll hold my hands up if that's the case, but it's not looking good. And creatively, from what Gunn's saying and everything we heard from the test screenings, that isn't good either. Now, it will be interesting to see if the mutant monkeys have been removed from the movie. Now, personally, I think the mutant monkeys are still going to be there. And if that's the case, although they have removed 25 to 30 minutes of this movie, so the mutant monkeys could be pulled out. Who knows? Who knows? If they're there, that's going to cause controversy. And this is what I don't understand. Some of the stuff we've seen creatively from this movie is just plain wrong. And it isn't going to work. What they needed was a simple, quiet, non-controversial movie. A movie that doesn't piss people off. It was a simple thing to do for James Gunn. And it looks like he's failed to do that. Because he really never had an idea how to make a Superman movie. He was struggling. Unfortunately, there's certain fanboys out there that think James Gunn is a visionary. And, you know, studio heads like David Zaslav, who know nothing about the business, think he's a visionary. He's not a visionary. He's good at doing one type of movie, and we're going to see it here. We're going to see the problems here. We're going to see the inconsistency of this movie. This is how I see it right now. But as I say, we haven't seen the movie yet, so fair's fair. I'm going to wait to see the movie. But this is my assessment of the situation with everything we've seen and we've heard. It's a huge problem when people don't understand what needs to be done. You own the DC IP and the Superman IP, right? You've got to do the right things commercially, right? Snyder and, Goya and Nolan and Terrio did their thing. And they weren't interested in the commercial element. But those films were green-lit for the commercial element. There lies the problem. They made Batman 89, Batman Returns for the commercial element, but Burton didn't make commercial movies. And this is why they didn't allow Burton to make a Batman 3. So you're either going to put your faith in auteurs to execute their vision, or you're not. And what they've done again, they've allowed Gunn to do anything he's wanted to do with this Superman movie. As I said earlier, I don't think that this movie should have launched a DCU. I don't think Superman should have launched a DCU, as much as I love him. And I think he doesn't get the character. I'm sorry. He simply doesn't get this character, and I believe it's going to show on the film.